Hello and welcome to a new edition of Political Smackdown. We're here taping on the Friday before the ice storm is expected, so we are glad you got to see this show this week, and we hope most people do. We have all of our regular crew with the exception of Betsy Wells, and we have our kind of permanent substitute for the Democrats, Roger Harris.
It's always a pleasure.
Roger, you have a lot of formers. You're a former teacher, a former principal, a former school board member, but a current grandpa.
And proud of that one.
Well, we're glad to have you today. Thanks for joining us. We're going to jump right in and talk about a local issue that has been in the news for a couple of weeks, and we haven't talked about it. We all know this gentleman, but current City Council member Scott Neisler on the Kings Mountain City Council and the former mayor was in December. On December the 10th, he got a criminal summons from the North Carolina Department of Insurance for allegedly not having an active liability insurance to do fireworks displays for people that he does. And he apologized for this at the Kings Mountain City Council meeting in January. I've talked to Scott about it. He says it was an oversight. It's been taken care of, that he forgot to pay his annual premium, and that he thought he had, that he's setting it up now where it will be paid automatically by bank draft so he doesn't ever forget that again. It is a misdemeanor. It's not a felony. It does not require anybody to resign, although at that Kings Mountain City Council meeting, a couple of people who probably didn't like Scott anyway said he probably ought to resign. I wouldn't necessarily say that's the case based on what I know. But at any rate, what do you guys make of the Honorable Mr. Neisler's legal issue? What is its implication for his effectiveness in Kings Mountain? Andy, you want to get us started?
Might as well. I mean, it's sort of tough to be effective in Kings Mountain on the best days. Maybe I won't get egged if I drive through Kings Mountain.
He said that out loud.
I did. Everybody's thinking it. Anyway, you know, Mike, to me, no harm, no foul. He did go, and evidently he did present this as a live liability insurance. The event he was going to do in Kaiser Elementary School was canceled, so there was no firework event. So, I mean, if there's no event, is there really a problem? I mean, I really don't think Scott intentionally ever set out to do this. He has been doing fireworks, no commercially, professionally, as far back as I can remember. This is his thing. Yeah, and I just can't believe that it's anything intentional. I think some folks were probably getting overheated because they probably didn't like him anyway, like you said. I personally think it's just nothing. I think it'll go away, and I think Scott's tried to get ahead of it, which I think is smart.
Scott has helped with fireworks programs in Kings Mountain, Shelby, Mooresboro has one, and Scott has helped my former business partner, Benny Smith, do that one in Mooresboro, and they always get all their permits, and they have their liability insurance and so forth. But this was to just add up a little for the public. Kaiser Kaiser School was having 100th anniversary of it in October, and it was on the bye week for Burns football, so a lot of Upper Cleveland people could go to it, and that's what it was for and was going to be at. And then it rained on the day of the event, and they didn't have it, as Andy alluded to. Roger, what are your thoughts?
Well, I've met Scott a few times, but I certainly don't say that I know him well, but there is a fundamental principle of law, and that is that a person is presumed innocent until proven guilty. Neisler said it was an oversight, not intentional, said it's been taken care of. It is a misdemeanor, but it is a Class 1 misdemeanor, which is the second most serious of the misdemeanors. There's a 1A, which is the most serious, and then 1, 2, and 3. So it's not a minor event. It's a pretty serious misdemeanor on the same level with communicating threats. But even if he's convicted, if there's no priors, then the punishment's likely to be next to nothing. But you know, as a broad statement, public officials need to be held to high ethical and legal standards. And that applies whether you're a city councilman or a school board member or whatever. There's a high standard for public officials. That's the only way that I think the public can have confidence in its officials. Sometimes there's resignation, sometimes there isn't. North Carolina Senator Norman Sanderson was charged with DWI back in October, and he didn't resign, but Representative Cecil Brockman was charged with indecent liberties with a child, and he did resign, as he should have. So sometimes it happens, and sometimes it doesn't. Shoot, the President of the United States again convicted of 34 felonies, and he didn't resign. So sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. I say, let's give Mr. Neisler his day in court and just see how it comes out.
And his court date is currently, as we understand it, based on news reports, February the 12th. But it could be settled outside of court before that, who knows? But that's between he and his attorney. Wes?
On behalf of the Republicans, thank you for bringing up President Trump's felonies. Mike, I think it's a non-issue. Mr. Harris was right in the sense that had he not been a current member or former mayor, we probably would not have even heard about this. This is an ongoing thing for that business. Well, all businesses, we have to have insurance, right? And something that seems to be something that could have easily been overlooked for some reason or another. If the insurance man didn't call you and say, hey, it's time to pay, or we need you to re-sign a contract. He's obviously had insurance for all these years. To drop it now would seem beyond the scope of likely. So I think it's a non-issue. You always hate to see someone in public service have to deal with this, but you know, we are responsible, and he stepped up. He's been responsible. I think this is the end of it.
And he did make a formal apology at the Kings Mountain City Council meeting in January. Well, he was served by the Department of Insurance Criminal Investigations for the state of North Carolina. That'd be a kind of a scary summons to get.
Well, I was wondering if it's the DA or where it came from, but I'm glad you found that out.
That side, I'm glad insurance commissioner is keeping up with these things, because it is critically important to have, but that it was willful on the part of Mr. Neisler, I think is negative. I just don't see that
either. I don't.
Well, let's not also forget it has nothing to do with the charge, but as far as some people's attitude in Kings Mountain, that was a very, very competitive and somewhat less than civil race that he won in a three-way race, and he got nearly 50% of the vote, over 47%.
What do you say, Mike? You saying they had a council race and the school board meeting broke out?
And I suspect that if you ran a criminal background check on every elected local official in Cleveland County, you'd probably find some more dirty hands here and there as well with misdemeanors.
Unfortunately, we're all too familiar with elected officials getting in trouble around the state and the nation that we read about nowadays.
Yep.
So, but Scott, we wish you well. We believe, based on what we know, that it was not intentional, and we hope it all works out well for you. All right, well, we're going to move on to a different sort of subject. It is a North Carolina subject, but dear Lord help us, in early January, for the first time in the history of the state of North Carolina, Republicans by registration now outnumber Democrats. That has been coming along and narrowing for years. In fact, unaffiliated voters are growing faster than Republicans. Only Democrats of those three major registration types have been declining steadily. But there's a chart there. There are now, as of January 3rd, and it's changed a little more since then, we got tons of them at least going to unaffiliated from Democrat for the time being across the state. The unaffiliateds are almost 39% of the voters. Republicans just barely more at that point than Democrats, but they passed around January 1st, and this was printed on January the 3rd. You can see all the other parties around the state have gained some as well. So, Wes, did you think you'd ever live to see the day that we'd outnumber the Democrats in North Carolina?
Gosh, I remember when Republicans became a majority in Cleveland County, and you could feel the earth shake from the days of the GOP meeting in a phone booth, which was in my lifetime. I mean, it's not been that long ago. I'll get us started with a little bit of history, but I do want to come back with my take on why some of this is happening. But since the 80s, and I think we've got to really credit Ronald Reagan with this beginning of change with Republican registration. But since the late 80s or early 90s, Republican registration has been static. It really hasn't gone up much. The vast majority of this are Democrats becoming unaffiliated, and it's not as much, Andy, you changing parties, it's that Democrats, as they die off, fall off the rolls, new people come on and don't register Democrat. They tend to register Republican or unaffiliated. That's where this real growth is coming from. 1988 was the banner year in Cleveland County when we elected our first Republican to a statewide office, John Weatherly. and Charlie Harry, the first Republican elected to a local office. And then 10 years later, the Republicans had the majority of the county commission. That's where the changes really occurred in Cleveland County. That parallels the state in many ways. I think you've got to credit Reagan primarily with that. But again, it's not that Republicans are growing today as much as it is as Democrats are. People are no longer registering as a Democrat.
Well, Roger, you're the historian of the bunch here. What are your thoughts on what's happened in the last 20 or 30 years?
I agree with most of what Wes said, although I would argue that you go back earlier than Reagan, really going back to the Lyndon Johnson time in the 1964-65 period. That's when some things started to change. It's really not surprising to me this happened. A lot of Democrats have been voting Republican, at least in federal elections in North Carolina, for a long time. Republicans in North Carolina have won every single presidential election since 2008, so that's been going on for a long time. But you know, I can sort of see the Republicans at their next convention holding up signs saying, "We're number 2," which is better, I guess, than being number 3. But the unaffiliated voters is really where it's changed. And my sense is that's from younger voters. Younger voters are overwhelmingly choosing unaffiliated. When my own granddaughters got old enough to register to vote a couple of years ago, they wanted to know why they should not register unaffiliated. Neither party has closed primaries. There's no real practical reason to register with one party or the other. And I really couldn't give either one of my granddaughters a real good reason not to register unaffiliated other than just choosing a team color, because that's what was happening. There was a lot of gerrymandering that has resulted in some of the Republican gain, but the reality is the Republican percentage of votes since 1988 has stayed pretty much the same of what it was in 1988, but the loss has been in the Democratic Party. I don't think it's Armageddon, but it's certainly alarming. The Democratic Party clearly has an image problem. Too many folks, either rightly or wrongly, see Democrats as all liberal. I don't think that's fair, but our party clearly has an image problem.
Well, Andy, you and I have discussed many times this is not the party of Mark Bass Knight and David Hoyle that we knew when we were young adults, and that has had some impact.
Well, it is. I mean, I was part of what was considered the business Democrats in Raleigh, and there was a good many of us. And we were the difference between our more liberal friends, who their biggest thing they do every election is go down and file, and their elections are over. They could not comprehend how some of us that were giving them their majority had to go basically hand-to-hand combat in some of these districts. And they never did understand that. And they said, "Well, I don't understand why you can't stay with the caucus." Well, you know, because my people back home aren't for, they ain't for you being able to marry your chihuahua or something. I mean, you've got to remember who sent you. And that's what my thing was. But Roger, I think what you're seeing now is we've got a cultural shift going on. We have a generation of non-joiners.
Yes.
I mean, they're not, you see it, they don't
You see
join
the churches and civic clubs and everything.
And you look at all the various service clubs that are around, just pick something. They will not be a joiner. They do not want to be tied down to one thing. They want to have complete, total freedom to do what they want, how they want to vote.
You see that in a lot of things, from Rotary to Boys and Girls Clubs to country clubs.
That's
Young
exactly
people are
right.
not joiners. Wes, you can do it in about a minute. You can philosophize as you said you'd like to
I think
do.
I'll do it in less than that. I think it's more than an image problem, Mr. Harris, is the Democrats have lost members down from roughly 72% to now 30% in North Carolina. The voice of the remaining far left has become louder within the party. As such, the center of American politics, I think, has moved to the left, leaving most of us who would consider ourselves rather centrist now to the right, uncomfortable being a Democrat, and many people uncomfortable being a Republican.
Does Wes consider himself a centrist, Andy?
That's what he just said.
I said more centrist.
And he's looking at me when he said it. He said, we.
more centrists. But I really think that's the difference. The politics in America has shifted the center left due to this loud voice among Democrats. It's not just image. There's a real philosophical issue
And,
there with the
and
party.
let's face it, we do have a president that is more pragmatic than philosophical, unlike Ronald Reagan. He was more philosophical but had a pragmatic streak.
Is there any philosophical in the current president?
I'll
No.
let y'all answer that question.
Thank you.
Do either you Democrats want to add anything to that before we go to break?
I think a wide ideological spectrum would benefit both parties.
Amen.
All right, well, we're going to come back and talk about the Cleveland County School Board Forum coming up in just a minute.
Tune in to Senior Moments here on C19 TV. I am Jackie Sibley Newton with Terabella Assisted Living. Whether you are a senior planning for your own future or helping someone make decisions, Senior Moments has got information to share. We talk about the wealth of services, activities, and healthy living options available to you here in our area. That's Senior Moments on C19 and also on C19.tv.
Back home to Cleveland County on the 29th of January, the week that this will be playing, hopefully, after the ice storm. At 6 o'clock at the LeGrand Center in Shelby, there will be a forum for 8 of the candidates running for 4 seats on the Republican ticket for Cleveland County School Board. There are 9 running, but 1 cannot be there or will not be there, Jay Carpenter, but here are the 8 that I understand have agreed to be involved. And I will say, as a matter of disclaimer, this is being put on by the chair and people within the Cleveland County GOP, not by the community college or any of us personally. But it's going to be a chance for people that care to go, and I don't know how they'll get it put out to public consumption after that, if it'll be taped. I've not been told that. I do know that our news source, Shelby Independent, plans to cover it, and I think ShelbyIndependent.com will have it, and hopefully the Shelby Star will as well. Now, there is no Democratic primary, but there are 2 people on the ballot that will meet these 4 for the 4 seats, Coleman Hunt and Jenny White, in November. So we're not leaving them out, but there is no Democratic primary. So what are the primary issues in the school board race you think probably should be handled in this type of forum, and how do you see what the public stands to gain from learning more from these people? Wes, you want to start?
No, thank you. Well, a lot I don't know about the forum. I don't know what the format is, don't know exactly how this is going to go about. I think it's scheduled for 2 hours. Of course, you've got a lot of people in it, so we'll have to be short answers to have many questions. But, you know, I think you start with the basics. We've got a lot of big personalities on the school board today, and I think a lot of people would describe the current actions of the board as somewhat dysfunctional. Is that a fair statement?
They're completely.
That's a generous statement.
Yeah, I think you're being very kind.
So I think if I were asking questions at the forum, I would want to start with the basics. What is the role of a board member? What is your perception of the role as a board member? What is your perception of the role of the board? How should the board be organized? There's been a lot of discussion about committees or not. I've never been a part of a board that didn't have working committees, but I would want to know what the candidate's vision for the organization of the board is. And I would also ask the sitting members, and at least one former, and then the new members, what are you most proud of? What is one thing you spearheaded and accomplished as a member of this board? And if you're a candidate running for the first time, what would you spearhead and accomplish? What's the big picture thing that you really think needs to be done? I think all of that would help flesh that out. The fact that 100% want safe schools, 100% want fairly compensated teachers, I think there's going to be unanimous agreement on those issues. I'd like to see them delve into the organization of the board and the role of the board.
Well, Mr. Harris, you're the only one amongst us that has served on the Cleveland County School Board, and I'm sure you have plenty of thoughts.
Well, I do. Most of them I can't share, but I will share.
You think I'm the only one who can get you in trouble, Mike?
There are 9 Republicans running this year, and if you get a sense of deja vu, there's a reason for that. Jay Carpenter and Robert Queen and Sheila Knipe and Rodney Fitch all ran in 2024 and lost in the GOP primary. Then you got three incumbents on there, Ronnie Blanton, Ronnie Grigg, and Aaron Bridges. So there's only two really new faces that have come up. One of those is
You
Brandon
better
Briggs.
go back and say Danny Blanton, not Ronnie Blanton.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Ronnie Blanton was a friend of mine that passed away a few years ago, and I still have, yeah, Danny Blanton. And Ronnie Grigg and Aaron Bridges. Ronnie Grigg, by the way, in Spanish is Danny Blanton. So anyway, there are two new faces. Brandon Bridges lives in the Upper Cleveland area and seems to be a supporter of Team Blanton. And then there's Stephen Self. He lives in Kaiser, and I've just told you everything I know about Stephen Self. Maybe a fine man. I just don't know the man. But I, you know, when the forum comes up, I think one of the questions has to be, how do we quit making the school board meetings look like a three-ring circus? They need to learn how to disagree without being a jerk, need to learn how to act like grown-ups and talk to each other, reach a consensus, which is not the same as agreement, but reach a consensus and stop acting like children. Quite honestly, when I watch the school board meetings on television, it's an embarrassment to our county. We have better people in Cleveland County, and that's not the way that we act when we go to the Shelby Cafe. That's not Cleveland County, and it's an embarrassment. I think that there has to be some discussion about how we attract and keep good teachers. When I was a principal, when I had an opening, I would have 9 or 10 real good candidates apply for a position. Now you're lucky if you get 1 or 2. The things have changed for lots of reasons we could talk about, but they've got to figure out a way to attract and keep good teachers. Help is clearly not coming from Raleigh. The General Assembly, shoot, they can't even pass a budget. So help is not going to be coming from Raleigh. And then the next thing that I think they need to talk about that night is figure out how we're going to deal with aging school buildings. There's a lot of school buildings that are 50 and 60 and 70 years old, and how to deal with those. And the loss of students to non-traditional schooling has to be an issue that they talk about.
Well, Andy, before I come to you, Roger, I'm not correcting you, but I know a little more about this gentleman. You mentioned Brandon Bridges. You seem to be a part of Team Blanton. I can assure you he is not a part of anybody's team.
All right, good.
He is an independent thinker. I don't know that he can win. He's going to do a low-budget campaign. He has gotten out and done some media. And I'm just in full disclosure, the reason I know Brandon is he has done computer work for me for a few years.
And I thank you for doing that, because quite honestly, if I've ever met the man, I don't know it. I was teasing a little bit, but thank you for that.
He will think for himself, and he will sometimes agree with this side and sometimes with that side, but I can promise you I know him well enough to know he's not a go along to get along. Andrew, your time.
Well, I don't know what else I could really add to this other than what I said last week. This is an embarrassment that you've got people that can't even get along. You know, let's move some seats around. Let's have some intervention of some common sense. That would be such a wonderful thing to happen. But I would have to ask is, how do you see yourself integrating yourself into this board? As if most of the ones that are incumbents are probably generally get reelected. Every once in a while, Roger, one of us, we drop, we don't quite make it, but I think you'll probably see the bulk of them probably go back. And how would you be able to work with these people? And that to me is the biggest question.
There are essentially 4 incumbents running, in the sense that Robert Queen has only been out less than 2 years,
right,
and lost in the primary, but he's been there.
Yeah.
And of course, on the Democratic side
and
of the fall,
Rodney Fitch was recently.
And Rodney Fitch, there's really 5 incumbents, but you've got basically a split there in the board of about 5 to 4. For example, on who was going to be vice chairman. Chairman passed this year 6-3, but vice chairman passed 5-4. Could the outcome of this election impact who's going to be chair and
I don't
vice
think
chair?
there's any doubt about
Certainly
that.
possible.
So, I mean, people have got to think, who do I see of this group that I would have no problems with being the chair? I mean, there's going to be some people that will absolutely have a screaming fit. about Danny Blanton being the chair, but then you've got a whole bunch of other folks that think that'd be the most wonderful thing they've ever seen. So, but that's why we have elections.
Right.
Well, it's going to be an interesting race, and y'all, I've always thought I could pretty well figure most local elections out. I'm just not sure who's going to be the four that come out on top.
And Mike, you and Andy have written more questions for forums than anybody I know. What the questions are, how they're asked, is going to be a big part of how these candidates are forced to or are able to respond.
I agree.
Yeah, we had some help from the Chamber and the Star and from Greg Tillman for years and Thornburg before that. So we inherited a good format.
Yeah, we did.
All right, let's move to the lightning round, and good luck to all the school board members. Roger, what's your lightning round this week?
Donald Trump in 10 days has come close to destroying the NATO alliance that has checked Russian aggression and kept world peace for almost 80 years. He threatened our allies, especially Denmark, by claiming that the United States was going to get Greenland one way or the other, either Greenland or Iceland, and he kept confusing the two countries. To be clear, these are our friends. These are our allies. He threatened France and Britain with economic sanctions and said out loud what we were all thinking, and that is that his feelings were hurt because he didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize. And now the damage has been done. He's reached an agreement that is nothing more than the status quo that we've had since 1951. Gentlemen, the 25th Amendment was placed in the Constitution for a reason. Vice President Vance, it's time to talk to Grandpa and take away the car keys.
That's pretty rough, Roger. Andy?
Wes, I think you would probably appreciate this. I found out of Wall Street Journal. Do you know that the New Hampshire legislature makes $100 a year, period? It is in the state constitution since 1889, that they cannot constitutionally make more than $100.
They're worth every penny of it, too.
And that's what the folks in New Hampshire thought in 1889, evidently. But we've talked about the problems we have about what ours is in North Carolina. New Hampshire has a real problem.
Wes?
Well, Mike, the most watched football game on CBS in 2025 was the Army-Navy game. It grew a bigger TV audience even than the Florida-Georgia game. Mr. Harris, in the midst of the attempted destruction of NATO, of the takeover of Venezuela, the Gaza Strip, the fallout from Greenland, and immigration control, the president was not to be outdone in fixing this problem of too many people watching the Army-Navy game. He has issued an executive order to fix this, saying that there can be no other football games on the second Saturday of December when Army plays Navy. It is exclusive to them. Thank you, Mr. President.
Holy cow.
Well, I'm going to do a little historical thing related to at least a part of what Roger did, a little different slant. Much has been said about Trump's desire to control the large Arctic island of Greenland, which is under Danish or Denmark's control. It looks like a framework has now occurred where it can be used as a shield against potential Russian or Chinese missile attacks in the future. At least there's a framework. But here's an interesting thing. The United States officially has purchased land from Denmark in the past. In 1917, they purchased the Danish West Indies, which are St. Thomas and St. Croix and one other island that are now the U.S. Virgin Islands. And guess what, Andy? They paid for it, and how they paid for it.
Gold.
Paid for it in gold coins, $25 million worth of them in 1917, and that has been the case ever since. That was by treaty, and it was ratified in 1917. So it is a precedent for taking over things from Denmark.
And one of those was Epstein Island.
Or at least purchase it.
Have a good week, and we'll see you next week.